Welcome. I'm glad you guys are joining us today. Over the last couple of days, we have been visiting the Tailor Built properties in Utah, as well as we have had the opportunity to be there for the Trustee sale that took place on the 9th. And so we wanted to kind of bring you a little bit of an update to that by showing you some of the footage and photos that we took of the properties as we visited them prior to the actual Trustee sale. And so wanted to kind of run through a little bit to help you understand the process of the Trustee sale in kind of a step-by-step process. So I've asked Pat Vassar to be here with me today, and I'm going to run through some questions. Hopefully this will help you understand how we go about this process internally and what to expect now. So thanks, Pat. I appreciate you helping me out today. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and hopefully our audience will get a little bit more insight as to what we do prior to, on the day of, and thereafter.
Sure.
So we're first going to start with, at what point is the Trustee sale determined?
Well, it's a statutory requirement from the state of Utah. So it's 120 days for the whole process to go about.
Mm-hmm.
That first starts with a notice of default, letting the borrower know they are in default of the terms of the loan. From there, it can be as short as 120 days and as long as, well, pretty much as long as forever. Mm-hmm. But we try to get it as short as possible, and in most cases, it's right around 123, 25 days.
Okay. So the date was set. That date was?
2 days ago.
2 days ago. So on January 9th, we were attending the Trustee sale in Salt Lake City.
Correct.
And in Farmington,
Correct.
Utah. So in the state of Utah, who conducts the Trustee sales?
That's always done by the trustee of the deed of trust. The trustee is, in theory, a third party that holds the title to the property until either the loan is paid off or the property needs to revert back to the lender or the beneficiaries of the note. So the trustee. In this case, we did a substitution of trustee. When we originally did the note, the deed of trust, the trustee was a title company. They're the ones that facilitated the transaction between the borrower and the lenders, utilizing Ignite funding on behalf of the lenders. Once that process was done, we became in first lien position. We then did a substitution of trustee, putting in an attorney to act on our behalf as a trustee that will be more competent in initiating the foreclosure and seeing that all the way through. It is a very legalized process. It's a step-by-step. If you miss one of those steps, the borrower can come back and sue Ignite funding and or potentially the beneficiaries.
Okay. And where do these Trustee sales take place?
They physically take place in any public forum. Most commonly, it's done at the county courthouse. Usually they're done either in a room on the county courthouse or the front steps of the county courthouse. In the case that we attended yesterday, it was just inside the building. It was right when you walk in, that's where everyone was. On a nice day in Utah, you'd probably be outside, but given the conditions, it was just right inside.
And we took a little footage of that. Wanted to make sure you guys had a clear understanding of exactly how that process takes place.
Going to be located at 4539 and 4535 South Laker Place, Mill Creek, Utah. Also identified as lots 5 and 6, Laker Place, PUD. Tax identification numbers 2205 407 027 and 2205 407 028. So there's two properties that are involved in this deed of trust. Again, 4539 and 4535 South Laker Place. You have a bid now of $200,001. On behalf of the lender, I'm authorized to bid $250,000. $250,000 is the current bid. Okay, I have a bid of $250,001. On behalf of the lender, I'm authorized to bid $260,000. Feeling lucky?
No, I know it's
$260,000 is my current bid, $260,000.
Let's move on. So how is the minimum bid determined, and is there any strategy as to what the minimum bid is that we initially set?
Well, the first question, who establishes it? It is the beneficiaries. Keep in mind the beneficiaries on all our loans are our investors.
Yes.
Our investors give us a special power of attorney that will allow us to act on their best behalf in order to determine that amount. Is there a strategy involved? Absolutely. There's a strategy in pretty much all of this,
Yes,
right?
there is.
The strategy is that you want to bid, the opening bid low enough that entices people. Let's say if you're selling a Ferrari on eBay, do you start that Ferrari off at $1 million or do you start it off at $1?
Yeah.
Well, you usually start off fairly low to get the bid going, get people enticed by that.
Yeah.
A lot of these people that go to the auctions are just there obviously to make a quick buck, and they will only go to the auction or physically look at the properties if there's equity in it.
Yeah.
So we tend to start the bidding off fairly low for that reason.
Okay. And what increments do they go up? Is that assessed and determined by us? Or, is that determined by the trustee at the sale?
There is no set increments that it has to go up. It could go up $1, it can go up a penny if you want, or it can go up $1 million. Those increments are, it doesn't matter. We usually let the trustee kind of figure that out as the bidding is taking place. If he can see where the bidding's going, then he will increase those increments. If he sees the bidding is only now down to 1 or 2 people, then he will shrink those increments up to hopefully entice them to move just a little bit more and hopefully meet our reserve amount and ultimately sell the property at foreclosure auction.
Okay. If he bids it up too fast, what are the consequences to the lender?
There's 2 main consequences. One is the other bidders may drop off. They might say, no, that's a little too rich for me, and just that huge jump initially, they bow out. Secondly is whatever the highest bid is, no matter if it's the lender or a third party, sets the value for the transfer.
Yes.
There is a transfer tax that has to be paid. So if he bids a very high number, now we're paying transfer tax, usually around 1.5%. 1.5% of a very large number. Obviously, we want that number to be very small if, in fact, we take back the properties.
Okay. What is the reserve set at, and how do we determine that number?
The reserve is one of 2 things. The max the reserve can be is all the dollars the lender is owed. That includes principal, late fees, interest, accelerated rates, attorney's fees, foreclosure costs, everything that has been established by the promissory note and deed of trust that is enforceable, we can bake into that price. That is the max we can do. Now, we can also do anything less than that max. We can say the reserve is $1 if we would like, and whatever that property sells for, it sells for. The way to kind of think about that is if the property has a lot of value in it, we want to put that reserve every penny we possibly can, because if it sells, we want to get everything we possibly can out of auction. Keep in mind, this is not a normal auction per se. This is not a typical arm's length transaction. So the properties that do sell usually sell for well below fair market value.
Yeah. And it's also important as to why we go there prior to the trustee sale to make sure that the property is still in the condition that we saw it the last time we were there. And so that's a lot of the reason why we're visiting these properties frequently and specifically the day before the trustee sale, so we ensure that our reserve is set properly.
Absolutely.
So if the bidding goes above that reserve amount, what happens with those additional funds? Do they go back to the lender? What happens in that situation?
Those additional funds belong to the borrower. We can only take, at a foreclosure auction, we can only take what we're allowed, and that is determined, like I said, by the deed of trust and promissory note. What that max amount is, or the reserve amount as you would like to call it, is all we could potentially get. If the bidding goes beyond that amount, we will get our amount, and whatever that differential is will revert back to the borrower. If the borrower is in bankruptcy, if they're in a defunct status, it still is technically their assets, but it's not ours. We can't take any more than that.
Okay.
Whereas if the property reverts to us at a foreclosure auction and then we sell it the very next day, we can sell it for whatever price we want All of that money is the investor's capital.
Okay. What if nobody bids? We had that happen a few times.
If nobody bids, that doesn't mean the property's not valuable. It doesn't mean that nobody wants the property. It just means that nobody there either has the capital to do it or the expertise to get involved with it. That did happen on a few of our properties. That means it reverts back to the lender at that lowest amount that we set, the opening bid amount. So we pay a very little amount in property tax, or excuse me, in transfer tax, and it reverts back to the lenders. They own it now, and now we go about selling it.
So if you attend a trustee sale, what do you have to be prepared for as a bidder? Can they just come in and free will bid? Do they have to come with cashier's check in hand? And how quickly do they have to close on a bid if they are indeed the highest bidder past the reserve or max bid we set?
It is all determined by the trustee. The trustee that we used, like I said, was an attorney. Our attorney, the amount that was required by the bidders the day of the auction was $20,000. So if you were the max bidder and you won the bid, you owe the $20,000 in a form of a cashier's check right then and there.
Okay.
If you cannot, your bid is disallowed and the next highest bidder gets it.
Okay.
That $20,000 check is applicable to the sales price of the property. The remaining amount is owed within 24 hours to the trustee. If the property is not sold, meaning the buyer was unable to come up with those proceeds, it goes back up for auction and will be sold again.
Okay. So at what point does the property change ownership? Do we have these properties in our ownership now? Trustee sale was on the 9th. Do we have recorded deeds in hand?
Yes, we have recorded deeds. According to Utah law, the transfer of asset takes place at the trustee's sale. There are some caveats to that. The caveat being a bankruptcy. Another caveat being a lien filing before the trustee's sale. So this trustee's sale, at least the one for Salt Lake County, was at noon on the 9th. Let's say a bankruptcy filing happened at 11 o'clock. Well, that trustee's sale is void. That would act, in essence, it never really happened because the bankruptcy supersedes that. With a bankruptcy filing, you usually don't find out until the next day. So what trustees typically do, and this is what our attorney did as well, they'll wait one day before they file the transfer deeds, moving the property from the borrower into the lender's name, just to make sure that there was no additional filings right before the trustee's auction. In the case of all the Tailor Built Homes that went on the 9th, there was no bankruptcy, there were no additional filings, so the transfer deed did happen on the 10th, and yes, we do have copies of all those, which means the lenders, i.e. our investors, are the owners of all of those assets.
So prior to a trustee sale, one of the things that we do, if you go back to the loan servicing agreement and read the default guidebook, is we create special purpose entities to take back these properties on your behalf. So you now have become members of an LLC, which is information that you will also see attached in the correspondence that we send to you. So that's how we were able to take back those properties and ensure that our investors' assets were secured and they are now in the name of those LLCs, and you now are the owners of these properties. Why does Ignite Funding attend a trustee sale?
Well, numerous reasons. One is because you're going to be there visiting the properties right before the foreclosure auction, just to ensure the properties are still in good condition, that they are still valuable, that they are still in a position to be sold for the right price. If there's been damage to the property, maybe that changes the mindset on the max reserve bid. If the properties have been improved for whatever reason, that may change your perception of what that max bid should be. That's one reason. The other is if there is anything strange that happens, the trustee is relying on our information that we have provided them previously to conduct the auction. If we miss a zero and he tries to sell the property for $35,000 instead of $350,000, that's a big difference. So we just want to make sure that everything goes smoothly, one, and two, be able to be a second set of eyes to catch any discrepancies over what we know to be true in fact.
And what about the bidders? Is this an opportunity for us to potentially figure out who a buyer may be after the trustee sale?
Absolutely. In most cases, the reserve price is not met, or that max bid is not met, meaning the property reverts back to us. In the case of the Tailor Built auctions, all of those properties did revert back to us. But to your point, it gives us a clear understanding of who are actual buyers or actual bidders out there. In talking about these properties for Tailor Built, I would guesstimate probably 10 different bidders on the different properties. Some of them are just speculators that are home flippers looking to make a quick buck, but others are brokers or end users that fell in love with a home and want to buy it for their primary residence. Those bidders are typically ones that are willing to pay a much higher premium or a higher price and get much closer to true retail value. In this case, there were quite a few that got very close to retail value. They did not meet our minimum bid, but they were very close, and we are actively in dialogue with them to put the property under contract. It would not surprise me that we have a few of these under contract in the next couple days.
Okay. So what should an investor expect now from Ignite Funding, now that our roles have changed? We, participated in this as a loan servicer and taking care of the loan and monitoring what was going on during the servicing. We now have become asset managers, and our investors have now become members of an LLC and have taken on the ownership of this property. What should they expect from us kind of moving forward over the next few months?
Yeah, it's the complete life cycle we talk about, right? We're a loan originator, then we're a loan servicer, and then we're an asset manager. So we've gone through those first two stages, and to your point, we're now an asset manager. Being an asset manager is a whole different ballgame than being an originator and or servicer. Being an asset manager entails more along the lines of asset protection and prevention of damage. We want to make sure that the assets stay in their current condition or get improved, and they are in a more sellable position. What investors can expect from us is just that, to preserve their asset, keep it in a good state, and make it as marketable as possible. In some cases, that means doing some repairs to the home. Mm-hmm. Maybe that means winterizing the home. Maybe that means wrapping it completely to keep birds and other critters away from the home. It means many different things. Maybe there's a hole in the roof that we need to spend some money on to get fixed to prevent additional damage. I can't list them all because the options are endless, but the role of an asset manager is primarily protection, and secondarily is to get the property sold. We will handle most of those sales in-house. If we are unable to do that, we will enlist brokers or salespeople in the different areas to get them sold. When we do that, there are additional costs that are borne by the investors. So we try to do it in-house first to save clients money. Mm-hmm. If we can't do that, then it'll be put out to other brokers to hopefully find buyers.
Great. Well, we have our work ahead of us to get these properties marketed and sold on your behalf. We want you to know we'll be doing everything we possibly can, like Pat said, to protect these assets, increase value if possible, but ultimately get you guys your funds back. That is our goal. It will continue to be our goal as we transition as asset manager of these properties. So thank you very much for entrusting us in doing this for you, and we'll see you next time.